All right. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is W.H. Mitchell, although you can call me William if you prefer. I'm hosting today's live online event for the KC Writers Fair. Originally, this fair was supposed to happen in person at the Indian Creek Library in Olathe, Kansas. But due to the coronavirus, the library pretty much closed down. And although it is back open, there's still, of course, concerns potentially of the virus. So we decided to do this online event. And essentially going to be a reading. Most of the authors who are going to be at the in-person event have graciously agreed to be part of this online reading. The difference is that since it's not in person, we don't have our books laid out to be sold. So I certainly ask that if you like what you hear today, please follow the links for the different authors and consider buying some of their books. None of them are being paid to read today. In fact, nobody's getting paid. It's a totally free event. But it would be nice if they could sell a few books. It's not required, but it always makes people feel good to sell their books. At some point in the future, I hope that we'll be able to be at the library in person, and hopefully if you're local, you can drop by and meet our authors directly. And hopefully we won't have masks at that time, or otherwise you can't really see the smile at all. But at any rate, let's see. I'm going to first have Rob Howell write. Let me put him up here. Let's see.
Hey, there's me and my books.
There you go.
Awesome. Thank you.
Nailed it. Yes, so Rob Howell is a best-selling author. He is the author, and I'm going to try to say this correctly, Shuyor N?
Shuyoren, yes.
Fantasy setting. The author of the Four Horsemen universe. His latest release is Where Now the Writer, third in the Edward series of fantasy mysteries. You can see the covers of that on the screen now. He is also a gamer, role-playing gamer, and he is going to be later today playing online. I think everybody is playing online these days because we're not allowed to be around each other anymore, apparently.
Well, let's see if this works. First of all, thanks, William, for having me and all the rest of us. You did a lot of work on this. It certainly wasn't an easy thing to start in the first place, and then with all the things that happened and with the pandemic and everything else, really thank you for all your work. Appreciate it.
Thank you very kindly. I appreciate that.
The reading I'm going to do today is actually from Brief as My Flame. It's another series set in the same world as the Edward Mysteries. That's the world of Shuyoren, as he mentioned. This is the second of the trilogy. I actually sent the third book in that trilogy to my editor yesterday, so I am really excited as things go right now. This particular chapter came about because I was doing a fundraiser for a friend who'd had a stroke. And I said I would put anybody who wanted to contribute to his fund into my next novel, and I did. And this is what came out for this particular friend of mine. This mug is cracked. I'll give you 2 brass marks for it. Shish Sabakya. The clay-splattered woman glanced up from her wheel. Buy or leave. I'm not caring, but don't give me that bullshit. What? Asked the startled traveler. Olga Belobeshnina Sharapanovna had once curled braided raven tresses under a helmet. She ran a hand through what little remained. Not only had the hair turned white, but she had long since cut it short. The heavy clay of Zapad Oblast got everywhere. As I see it, friend, you've got a choice, she added. Oh? The traveler's hand strayed close to the short sword at his side. Yes. I can pour some cider in that mug so you can see it isn't cracked. Then we'd toast to you paying fair coin for a fair mug. Or I can break something over yet another Mordecai's head. She drained the clay-stained mug at her side, got up, poured more into it, and then looked at the traveler questioningly. It's all just clay to me, and there are times I remember what I once was. The traveler considered the potter. Then he noticed the pomesnik blade hanging next to a bow and full quiver on the wall. It's up to you, she repeated. Bah! The traveler stomped off. Do you always have to be so rude, Olga? A young woman's face glanced out from the back room. No, I don't have to be. She grinned. I'm just happy to have the opportunity. The girl sighed. But you might have sold him something. Here's your lesson of the day, apprentice. Not every sale is worth it. Olga drained her mug and filled it again. Having that one as a customer would have driven me to drink. Can't have that. Of course not, came the prim reply. If you're done disapproving of your mistress, go over to Martine's. Tell him we need more clay. More? What do you think I do all day? Irritate customers and get drunk? Those are just hobbies. Now go do as I ask. The girl shook her head and turned to leave, but was distracted by noises at the south end of town. Her mouth opened and she turned back to Olga. But the older woman had heard the noises too, and the cider had not addled her memory. Her strap over her head. Raiders. Get into the hole, girl. What? The girl looked out the door and swore under her breath. She might not have had Olga's decades in armor, but she had grown up in this borderland. Where are you going? She asked suspiciously. I've never needed a horse to fight, girl. Now get down below and lock the door. You'll get killed. Damn Kriegers haven't gotten me yet. But if you say I'm too old, I'll kill you first. The girl's eyes widened. Now get in the hole, girl. Olga grinned happily. I've been bored lately. Olga waited until she heard the latch close and then hurried out of her shack. Many others, including the few pomesniki who stayed in this village, guards from caravans that happened to be here at the moment, and villagers who knew which end of a sword to point at the damned Kriegers, had already rushed to the wooden palisade that guarded Traderevnia. Olga took one look at the crowd near the southern entrance to the town and cursed. Fools. The motley assortment of defenders had repelled the first charge without problem. 2 torches tossed over the walls had found something to ignite, but even those were of little concern. Urchins who had seen too many raids in their short lives had already brought over buckets to douse those fires. But Olga did not watch any of that. Instead, she hustled to the northern gate. As she expected, the charge at the southern entrance had been but a feint. The raiders had come around to the north gate before any defender beside her could get into position. She fitted an arrow to the bow and fired at the leader of the Kriegers. It glanced off his shield. Perrin be damned. I knew I should have practiced more often. A torch flew over her head. More landed around her. She drew again, this time with more care. The arrow flew from her bow and into a Krieger's thigh, pinning him to his saddle. Better. 5 Kriegers rode up, whirling grappling hooks. Olga's arrows swept 2 off their horses, but 3 completed their throws. 2 of the hooks caught, and the riders rushed off. Another of Olga's arrows took a rider in his back, but they rode off with the gate trailing behind them. She glanced behind her. Many of the pomesniki and caravan guards rushed to help her, but they remained much too far away. Mordecai. She had 4 arrows left in her quiver. She fired 3 as quickly as she could at the leader. He blocked them with his shield. She glanced back at the warriors rushing to help her. Slowed them, but not enough. Only one thing to do. The Kriegers charged at the gate. She stepped from the wall to the middle of the gate. She held her last arrow nocked, but dropped the bow down in front of her. She began shouting curses. 200 arsheen away, she described in detail the Kriegers' parentage. 100 arsheen away, she described their sexual proclivities. 50 arsheen away, she dismissed all talk of their proclivities by pointing out that none of that mattered because of their inability to perform. At 20 arsheen, she raised the bow and released the arrow swiftly. It struck her target, the first horse in the largest cluster of Kriegers galloping at the gate. The horse stumbled and fell, and those immediately around it tumbled in a confusion of hooves, dust, and crunching bones. She jumped aside immediately after taking the shot and avoided the leader's sweeping sword as he charged through the gate. For the most part. His blade grazed across her shoulder and knocked her down. I'll need to drink a bunch of cider to ignore that later, but for now. Baring her teeth, she got to her feet and drew her sword. It felt odd in her hand. I should have practiced with this too. But she laughed and yelled, "Even so, I'm better than any of you Mudakai." Revenue's other defenders had reached the gate before the Kriegers could completely break through. Inside the gate was a swirling mass of metal, blood, and battle curses. One of the Kriegers turned her way. His arms were much longer than hers, which would have mattered if she had let it. She rushed at him, blocking his thrust and then twisting her wrist to strike at his arm. 10 years ago, that takes his arm clean off, she growled to herself. She shook her blade clear from his arm and slashed into his skull. Unfortunately, 2 more Kriegers pressed her before she could pick up the first Krieger's shield. They boasted little skill with their swords, but together they forced her back towards the northern tavern. She stepped to her left, forcing one of them to take an awkward step around a dip in the ground that had tripped her up a few times returning from that tavern late at night. Anticipating his hesitation, she attacked the other Krieger, batting away his sword and shoving her blade into his ribs. She twisted her sword out and managed, barely, to knock away the thrust from the other Krieger. She stepped in and punched with her hilt. She connected, but without the satisfying crunch she had hoped for. Still, the punch twisted the Krieger's head away, and she took advantage of the moment to chop down at his elbow. Her blade punched through the joint. She finished the raider off and turned back to the rest of the skirmish. Perrin, damn them all. Those caravan guards are worse than useless. She rushed through the few Pomesniki still standing. They were falling back under the pressure of the Kriegers, who could sense victory. By the Great Mother, she yelled, "Get your asses in line, or I'll damn well feed them to the pyre myself." Startled, the Pomesniki glanced back. Ordinarily, they would not even contemplate taking the commands of a potter, no matter how much blood mixed with the clay on her apron. But some had known Olga from before. They had also seen her stand at the gate. Their spines stiffened, and they remembered their drills. They formed up, shields snapping into place. 2 Kriegers did not notice the change and slammed into the shields only to earn Pomesniki steel in their bellies. That gave Olga a moment to look at what she had. Less than 10 of us, but maybe that's enough. "You 2 spearmen, keep those horses off our flanks." She gestured at the 3 Kriegers still in their saddles. She aimed the line at the knot of Kriegers in front of her and the few remaining caravan guards. "The rest of you Mudakai, advance at a step." The ragged line growled and followed her command. Though they were outnumbered, and despite the panicked caravan guards swinging without discretion, Olga's Pomesniki regained enough of their training to chop through all before them. However, the dead and dying piled in front of her line, halting their advance and allowing some remaining Kriegers to find openings. 2 of her shieldmen fell. She opened her mouth to get the line reformed amidst the chaotic swirl, but before she could, she heard charging hoofbeats. The leader of the Kriegers, clearly their most skilled horseman, had evaded her spearmen. She barely managed to get her sword up to block his blade. The charge knocked her down, but in his focus on killing her, the leader did not see one of the spearmen peel back. His spear point slid into the horse's flank. The leader managed to jump off as the horse twisted and screamed. The spearman tried to kill him as he tumbled to the ground, but the leader recovered too quickly. He batted the spear tip away and with 2 hefty swings left the spearman in several pieces. I'm really getting too old for this, Olga thought wearily. Her knee protested as she rose, and the wound from the leader's earlier charge had finally started hurting. The leader turned to her, the spearman's blood in lines across his chest. I kill you now, onion head bitch, he snarled in heavily accented Pereiaslavlan. She did not have the energy to snarl back as she wished, so she merely set herself to fight. The leader's charge knocked her back towards her shack. As she stumbled, his blade swept down in front of his cruel smile. She frantically put up her sword, and the blades collided. She had fought with that steel on every border of Pereiaslavl. Each foe of the Great Mother had tasted that steel, on horses across the steppes, on battlements, and on many fields and mountains she had served with her brothers and sisters bearing that blade. And today it betrayed her. It shattered under the Krieger's strike, though it did keep the blow from chopping into her head. She stumbled back to the door of her shack, looking for something to use as a weapon. The Krieger's smile broadened as he prowled after her, enjoying the moment. She reached her display table and grabbed the first mug that came to hand. She flung it at his head. He batted it away and laughed as it crashed to pieces. A second mug followed swiftly, though, and it struck his face, knocking his head back. Olga did not wait. She grabbed the mug the traveler had questioned eons earlier in the day. She jumped as best as her knee would allow, swinging the mug as hard as she could. The Krieger turned around and his eyes widened. He managed to get the point of his blade up. It entered her stomach as she jumped in. But the mug, made from the heavy clay of Zapad Oblast, crunched his nose and the bones of his face. The Krieger fell to the ground. Despite the wound in her stomach, she swung once more, and this time the mug shattered on the Krieger's head, leaving her holding nothing but the handle. She tried to swing again, but now her knee betrayed her. She fell on the unconscious Krieger. She looked at the handle in her hand and laughed. As the sky darkened, she muttered, "Maybe this mug had a crack after all." And that's that chapter. Olga specifically asked for me to make her hit somebody with a mug, so that's what I did.
Who doesn't love hitting people with mugs?
Absolutely, especially if you're a potter and you deal with rude customers all the time.
Exactly, exactly. Thank you very, very much, Rob, for that. I look forward to reading your new book once it comes out.
Thank you.
And I have posted, for those, if you look in the group chat, you can see the link to robhowell.org, where you can go and get Rob's books. He's also on Amazon as well.
And I have another anthology that I'm in coming out next Friday called We Dare Semper Paratus. My story in there is a mixture of Shakespeare, military science fiction, all set in Mars.
Very good. A lot of things happening on Mars these days, I'm told.
Yep.
So next, we're going to have Leanna. Leanna, you're unmuted. Good. Let
Yes.
me do the share while I introduce you. Hi, Leanna. Leanna Brunner is a professor, writer, and editor. She has worked at Johnson County Community College, just like me. She has published 4 novels, a nonfiction book, and a series of classes on writing, and a children's book. You can see on the screen right now some of those books. Don't Sweat the Haters, Leanna, is that the children's book?
No, that one, the kids' book isn't on there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The Haters is the nonfiction book. So.
Nonfiction, very good.
Okay, so a little bit of background about my series that I'm going to read from today. I live north of the river, way north of the river, in a rural part of northern Missouri, still kind of a traipse away from Johnson County, but there's a highway up here that is known for being very dangerous. We live off the highway in a neighborhood off there. And so I used to work night classes at Johnson County, and I'd be driving home, and I would, obviously as a very creative thinker and a writer, all these images would come to mind of these terrible things that were, supernatural forces and whatnot that were happening off the highway as I was driving home. So every night it kind of became this thing of, I wonder what's going on out there in these fields and everything. So Final Detour came from those rides home. And I thought, I'm just going to write about this highway. I've embellished it, obviously. And the fun part for me in writing this was taking the readers down rabbit holes and trying to get them to wonder what is this force out on this highway. And so I wanted to lead them to all the obvious ones, the aliens and ghosts and all these other things. And so out of that came this all mythology all on its own. And I'm having a hard time because it was supposed to be a trilogy initially. And I was at a writer's conference a while back, and a bunch of people came up and said, you need to keep writing the series. Everything kind of wound up, and I thought, okay, I'm done. But then they were like, just try it. And so NaNoWriMo came around, and I said, if I can write a book in a month, and and it's book 4, then I'll keep going. So I did, and book 4 emerged out of that, and that was the Beyond the Shadows book. So it's really not really a trilogy anymore. It's a whatever. I don't even want to say there's 4 books because I don't know at this point. So right now, book 4 was written several years back, and I haven't written book 5 yet because I'm stymied. I've kind of written myself into a corner, and I don't want to make it cliche. So and obviously I'm teaching, and I've also started an online writing center. So my writing is kind of taking a back seat to some of my other projects that I'm doing. But I hope eventually to write myself out of the box that I've created at some point. So we'll see. But I'm starting from the beginning. And this is actually Final Detour, book 1, chapter 1, because starting in the middle of this series would really, it's gonna discombobulate people even in the first chapter, but the other chapters, if I started midway through, it would be even more confusing. So I'm just going to start with chapter 1 and kind of go from there. And then just a couple of other words. I'm starting a children's book series. The first one is out. I haven't done a lot with it yet because it's a series on bugs. And the first one is a spider. It's about a little spider. I'm working on the second one now that is a lightning bug or firefly, whatever you want to call it. So I'm really not going to start promoting those until I have the series completely finished. But they're little kids' books about spiders and bees and ladybugs and all of that. So that's been a lot of fun. I have an illustrator doing that for me. So I'm kind of all over the place with my writing. I like to kind of mix and match it. So, all right, so this is chapter 1 called The Return. And this is, again, just kind of a little background. It's about this highway that is supposed to be set in Oregon, even though it's really set about, a block from here. So chapter 1, The Return, October 15th, it's 5 p.m. It was here, she knew it. She could feel it. The monkey bobblehead wobbled on the top of her dashboard as Jillian sat in her blue Mustang atop the remote and secluded winding road. She stared at the toy, her skin crawling and heart pounding. Tick, 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 tick. It had started up very suddenly just a few seconds after she had stopped her car on this desolate highway. Tick, 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 tick. It nodded and rocked forward like the familiar sound of the grandfather clock that resided in the hallway of her parents' old Victorian home. The brown monkey's face gazed back at her, seemingly taunting her with its dark circular eyes and broad white smile. Moments slipped by, and eventually, just as suddenly as it had started, the bobblehead's nodding came to a stop. She let out a deep breath and slowly opened her car door, fearful that her shaking legs may not be able to support the weight of her nerve-racked torso. She resolved not to let anything surprise her after the events of the past few months, especially out here. She walked around the front of her car, occasionally reaching out for its support, as if it were a living creature that understood what she was experiencing. Jillian paused at the top of the grassy hill and scanned the landscape below her. The road was quiet and abandoned, except for the faint rustle of the trees that surrounded her. Not a car could be seen in either direction. Most people were smart and avoided this place. She took a deep breath and started to descend the hill, each step causing her heart to beat more quickly within her chest. As she made it to the bottom, the tall, sharp blades of untamed grass scraped her bare legs. The waves of dead and brown grass spread before her, and the tree line of the forest lay within several yards. She could see the place where his car had come to rest, and could smell the faint scent of burned rubber if she breathed it deeply enough. Evidence of the accident abounded, but she had come to realize that evidence and accident could not be used in the same sentence when it came to this cursed highway. She was afraid, more afraid than she had ever been, but her fear was, in this moment, overcome by the raging anger that burned within her. Show yourself, you coward. I know you're here. Her voice pierced the stillness like a deep knife, slicing into the smoothest skin. Stop being such a coward. She expected to see something emerge from the trees that surrounded her, but she realized such a manifestation would make this far too easy. Only silence returned her harsh and angry words. She resolutely slumped down into the grass. I will wait for you if I have to wait all night. Her voice trailed off. She had to obey her heart, and it was telling her to stay put. As time passed, Jillian could occasionally hear the cry of an unknown animal or the crackling of branches in the distance. She squinted, although she wasn't sure why. The sun was setting, and dusk was approaching. She didn't know what she was waiting for, but she grew increasingly restless and hot as the time passed. She felt sweaty and thirsty. Her mind raced, filled with questions and anxiety. She alternated between scanning the grove of trees that surrounded her and glancing nervously at the clock on her phone, hoping that doing so would yield some kind of answer. She was sitting in the place where Alec's car had landed after cascading down the hillside. Jillian was grateful that his car had not exploded. Numerous tire tracks, both of the car itself and the rescue vehicles that had saved Alec and retrieved the wreckage, marred the hill, up to the place where her own car now lay hidden from her view. Her eyes darted uneasily, hoping to glean any semblance of movement or change in the periphery. If anyone had seen her, sitting there solo amidst the disfigured meadow, she might have been deemed mad or at the minimum overcome with grief. She, however, knew better. This field held the answers that she desperately needed, possibly to save Alec and to put to rest all the demons that had evaded her waking moments and her deepest dreams. She stood up as she stretched her arms to release some of the tension in her body. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw it, an inky shadow with no form or substance. Her fear became fueled by its presence, and she tried desperately to hold on to the anger to maintain control. She froze, every muscle in her body tight and contracted. As badly as she wanted to move, she was paralyzed. What do you want? Her voice was now only a quiet whisper. Fear was setting in. She felt the hair on the back of her neck rise, her impending flight ready to defeat her desire to fight. Jillian willed her face to turn slowly and stealthily in its direction. Suddenly out here, she felt exposed and vulnerable. As she blinked back tears of fear, however, there was nothing where she expected the evil presence to be, nothing but grass and trees and the fading sunlight. Damn you, she swore, her voice becoming audible again. I know you're here. Her voice became high-pitched and frenzied, more like that of a crazed woman than the young heroine she had pictured herself to be while driving here. She wasn't crazy. She had seen its shadow. She knew it was there, a presence with enough audacity to make itself known, but not enough courage to show itself. Her sleep-hungry mind was now playing tricks on her. She turned in circles, arms outstretched and flailing as if to defend herself, against what she had no idea. She could see nothing but the blur of green and brown as she twirled, making herself dizzy. Where did it go? She had seen it, and the chill she had experienced, despite the warmth of the autumn day, was proof. It, he, whatever, was here. Slowly, Jillian came to a stop, nauseated from the heat and spinning. There was nothing concrete within her view, and whatever she had seen, either real or imaginative, was gone. To her disappointment, this visit was yielding nothing new. Although she knew she had felt it, she had nothing tangible to mark progress or propel her any closer to any kind of a finality. 6 o'clock. She did not want to be here when the sun made its final departure. The sickening feeling that she previously had in her stomach had abated, and she wondered how Alec was faring back at the hospital. She noticed her hair whipping across her damp face. The anger that had brought her to this place had morphed into fear, but now a sense of foreboding was taking shape. She wondered what had brought her out to this place. Jillian was beginning to question her sanity. The highway had claimed over 30 lives that she knew of, and here she was, a young woman, alone, exposed to its very clutches, with no protection from any force, natural or otherwise. She had not even told anyone where she was going. Out here, Alec had become a victim to something terrible, and in her quest to discover its source, she had put her own safety at risk. For today, it was time to concede defeat, regain her sanity, and retreat from this place before it, whatever it was, came back. Jillian climbed the hill with unexpected swiftness and fervency and found the key that would return her to the safety of her car. Breathless and wet with perspiration, she clumsily fumbled with the lock and rapidly flung her door wide open. She let out a deep sigh, sank down into the sanctuary of her seat, slammed the door closed, clicked the automatic locks, and rested her arms and head on the hot, hard steering wheel. Trembling, her eyes scanned the horizon before she finally put her key into the ignition. I am okay. I can do this. As the motor of the car came alive with a welcome hum, Jillian's breath caught in her chest, and every muscle in her weary body froze in terrified unison. Her eyes caught a sight even more frightening than what she had seen in the meadow below. While she had been down there, waiting for it to pay her a visit, it had been up here. Somehow, despite being locked and secured in her car, the one place where she felt safe and untouchable, Monkey Bobblehead, had vanished. And that is chapter 1.
Monkey bobblehead. Now I'm going to have nightmares about monkey bobbleheads.
Sorry. Sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that very much, Leanna. And again, for those, if you want to check the chat, I have put in a link to, this will take you to her Amazon author page, I believe. So please take a look at that. Our next author is Novo Dé. All right. So Novo Dé is the author of the Entropy Session. As you can see the cover there. It's a tale of madness, psychological thriller of love and loss, culture and chaos, our past, present, and future relationship with technology. He is also, his most recent book is a novella, as you see there, Adulteration. Thank you, Novo, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Let me do this. There we are. Very good. So Novo, what are you going to be reading for us today?
Today, I'm going to be doing a chapter from the Entropy Sessions. And this chapter is a little more in the middle of the book. But if anybody has questions, I'll be happy to answer after the reading. The chapter is December 1st, 2051. Once you've ventured into the inner circle of the collective, a good house is never too hard to find. You just have to follow the data, look for the clues, and pray that you still have a friend on the inside. Luckily, I have that very thing, Lydia. The best kind of person to have on the inside, in fact. She's a gatekeeper. I still don't know exactly why I felt the need to escape, though. It must have been Dr. Cohen. Just mentioning the kid again in the session this morning. The mere thought of him, that's all it takes anymore. For someone on the inside, finding one is not too hard, no. But much like obtaining anonymous, my favorite drug, the steps to getting there can sometimes be meticulously intricate, even hidden. But I always tend to find my way to the end. Fortunately, I have a house that's close, near my own house, in fact, luckily within my own proximity arrest. And given my limited DRI output and the fact that my wife, Juliet, is still at work, the data just makes it look like I'm out for another long walk. Visiting maybe a neighbor. It makes sense that I'd find one in my very own neighborhood too, because every house I've ever been to, which is to say, isn't that many, honestly, it just looks like your everyday kind of house. Your run-of-the-mill, cookie cutter, just upper middle class, piece of crap real estate. But what lies below, that's the thing, is just this world of beautiful unknown splendors. Walking up to the door now, I have the same feeling I always have when I'm walking up to an anonymous house. I'm nervous, in part because it always may be my last. My heart's beating fast and hard, and now even faster as I walk up to the door, my extremities tingling, my thoughts pivoting to paranoid delusion. At the door now, I hold my breath as I begin to knock. I can feel as my body is about to succumb to a full-blown panic attack. And then the door opens, and Lydia is standing there greeting me with that unforgettable smile of hers. And I let out a deep sigh. Thank God I am safe. You're a sight for sore eyes, I say through a breathy exhalation. Lydia is a perfect gatekeeper because she is practically a walking oxymoron. On the outside, she looks like a classic conservative housewife, the same kind you'd find with every governor of a red state. Just long, shining, straight brunette hair. It's obvious that she uses a lot of product. Chocolate brown eyes to match, cute button nose, and a big, pretty smile full of teeth. And of course, we can't forget the shiny black dot that rests at her right temple, the neurological communication link. Today, she's wearing a light pink checkered shirt, a colored button down, a white tank top underneath, no cleavage visible, of course, with a matching darker colored pink crew neck cardigan. For her long legs, fitted dark, almost black jeans, and last but not least, off-red ballerina flats to complete the ensemble. But Lydia is anything but conservative. A user herself, underneath all of that garb, is sleeve back and chest tattoos. Her body is filled with piercings and large metal rings that rest in the deep tissues of her back, used to hang herself from for body suspension, so she can get to that more deeper meditative high, as she calls it, when using. She even, you can find her type on the 3rd level of the house. And she does every drug there is, not just the no names. I'm actually surprised she's still alive, honestly. It says a lot about her. So conservative, no. She just likes to hide in plain sight. But it's more than that. Lydia actually likes and prefers to dress like a domesticated upper-class mother of 3. It makes her feel pretty, she says. I just like it. It's my style, she told me once, which again is perfect for a gatekeeper. I mean, just one look at her and any thoughts of wrongdoing is diffused. No one really ever thinks that she is the sole marker between the world of the normal and the world of underground debauchery. Well, count my lucky stars. I didn't think it was going to be today that I'd see your cute little face around here, after our little text exchange, she says with a touch of Southern Belle flair. It needed to be today. Rough day, she says, scrunching up her nose. And I just nod, slowly. Rough morning, actually, I confirm. Lydia takes in a deep breath and looks up at me and smiles. Oh, Tybalt, my little Tybalt, my favorite little client. It's been too long, really, I've missed you. Tell me, how are things, these days? Not too great. Yeah, I heard. Just thought maybe, things were a little better by now. A little shocked to hear she already knew, I remained silent for a moment. Oh, come on, Tybalt, I hear everything. I have to, it's my job. So I just nod again, slowly. Well, that does help to explain a little more as to why you're here today at my doorstep. So let me guess, the usual, a little no name? And I nod again, slowly. Oh, Tybalt, I thought you were off the stuff, or at least, trying to quit. Yeah, me too. And Lydia just smiles, lips together. Old habits die hard, right? I start again. And Lydia simply smiles even bigger, full and bright now. It's lifestyles, Tybalt. Lifestyles die hard, especially after you find yourself. And then we both smile together. So what can I do for you today? I was hoping to come in and then, down. Straight to the point, I like that. All right, then, follow me. She turns around and walks into the entryway of the house, which is a small rectangular room in and of itself, as I follow behind. The first of many security clearances. We don't walk but a couple of feet into the house before she turns around and puts a hand out towards me. All right, sweetheart, that's far enough, she says, smiling again. First things first, I'm going to ask you the same question I always ask you before entering the house. And remember, I'll know if you're lying. Lydia is special. She specializes in analyzing micro-gesture discrepancies. Sure, yeah, of course, Lydia, do what you got to do. Now, does your presence today have anything to do with the police or any form of law enforcement that we should be aware of? No, ma'am. No, of course not. And Lydia stares at me, deep into my eyes, analyzing her head slightly off to the right. Holding my gaze, she then slowly begins to turn her head to the left, her lips slightly parting. Excellent, she says, smiling again, and then looks up. Charlie? Yes, ma'am, a female voice quickly responds from above. Have you had enough time to analyze, the imaging data? Yes, ma'am. And find anything? No, ma'am, he's clean. Excellent. Each house is equipped with built-in imaging technology in the framing of all doorways that are situated between the outside and the inside. All applicable imaging technology is utilized. X-ray, MRI, CT, you name it. The gatekeepers are looking for, recording devices, weaponry, guns, knives, really anything that the house owners don't want in the house. Be it a cop posing as a buyer, or a gangbanger just wanting to start some shit with someone on the inside. All right, now drink this, she says, handing me a small plastic cup with the blue liquid. What's this? Oh, right, you haven't heard. Well, about the same time as your trial, the DEA began to utilize moles with what we've been calling smart tissue, nanotechnology that has video and audio recording capabilities that can be hidden in the body's organ systems, like skin, for instance. It's undetectable with our doorway imaging. Luckily, we caught wind of this from the people we have working on the inside before any of our house operations were compromised. That little blue drink you're holding there, yeah, that's our defense against it. We have complementary nano machines that found in that liquid, and it's linked to our house's Charlie, allow us to detect if you have any of this smart tissue in your organ systems. Lydia, I'm not that kind of guy. I don't have any. Oh, Tybalt, honey, this isn't up to debate. I'm just not sure about. Look, I'm going to make this real easy for you. You won to the house, right? And I just nod. Well then, down the hatch. No one was allowed to stop the movement, they've always said. Realizing I have no choice, I drink the liquid and wait for a moment. Nothing happens, luckily. See? You're fine. I guess so. Charlie? Yes, ma'am. Did you find anything? No, ma'am, he's clean. Excellent. And trust me, Tybalt, if the feds ever do get to you, never agree to that kind of immunity. You don't want to know what we do with people we find with smart tissue. It's to the seventh circle with them. No, ma'am, I promise. The seventh circle. F that. Okay, one last thing, and then we'll get to payment. I need to take a little time to analyze your DR image from the last 6 months. Sure, yeah, of course. Lydia taps her NCL and grows silent, concentrating on analyzing my entire existence from the last half of the year, moving through all of the imaging algorithms to look for even the smallest detection that I could be a threat to the house. House gatekeepers utilize the highest DRIs that they can hack, usually a federal issued DRI. Watching her, you can tell she does this for a living every day. I mean, just the musculature in her eyes, so strong. You can barely even make out any of the ticks, any of the eye gestures, movements, the lid's barely oscillating. Okay, she says, coming out of it with a warmth in her voice. You're smart, Tybalt. Being out for so long, you're imaging. You're like a ghost in there. Okay, so we're good? I say back, and she nods. We're good. So, how would you like to pay today, Tybalt? The usual? Yeah, just put it on my credit under one of the department stores close. Of course, you got it. She taps her NCL a couple times, blinks repeatedly, and then looks up at me and smiles again. Right this way. And she leads me to the door to the floors below. End of scene.
Thank you very much. That was awesome. Thank you. I like how you read it as well. You have a nice,
Thank you.
Sort of acting, sort of, the characters and so forth. Better than me, that's for sure, but that's not saying much. I did post your link in chat. There was also a question in chat about what the authors find easiest, whether it's dialogue or description or what have you. I know some of the other authors have already written that in chat, but let's take a quick minute if you can, not too long because we're running late, but what do you find easiest to write, Novo? Do you write the dialogue easiest or the descriptions or what?
For me, it's dialogue for sure. I kind of take a method acting approach. So when I'm writing dialogue, I play every single character in the scene, and then I write it that way to make it sound as organic and as real as possible. I want it to always, my kind of dialogue, I always want it to sound like it's real people talking, like if you were listening to them just, at any, restaurant, public event, what have you. So that's definitely where my heart and soul lies. I love good dialogue, and I think we see that in all kinds of media. So it's what we're all kind of drawn to. So I definitely start and end there with the part I love the most.
Very good. Thank you again. And as I said, people can go to his website, theentropysessions.com, I believe, right?
Yes, sir. You got it, man.
Our next author is Rachel Ellyn. There we go. All right, Rachel. She is as in her own words, determined to be a publicist's nightmare. She writes in multiple genres, including children's fiction, flash fiction, romance, and suspense thrillers. You see just a few of her books on the screen there. I think her most recent is What Goes Around, I believe. That's the most recent. You also have the pig books, How to Pack a Pig in Piccadilly. I'm a huge fan of alliteration, so that's awesome. For covers, I love Pixie Shoes. I think that's a beautiful cover there.
Thank you.
What are you going to be reading for us today?
Well, I thought I'd start off with How to Pack a Pig.
All right.
And then maybe pull a little Casey Bell.
Okay, very good.
So we'll just, whip through these bad boys because they're quick and easy, right?
Right, very good.
So I guess we just get to the meat of the thing, right? This is the first book in sort of the little Hamlet trilogy that I just adored. I have that one, and then actually there's just two of them, and then How to Pack a Pig. So we got How to Pack a Pig and A Pig Packed to Piccadilly going on here. And excuse me, my cat's trying to butt in. Okay, and be careful because I'm not the best at this. So here we go. Vivian Scarlett sat in her high back booster chair in the back seat of the car, listening to her mother chatter on about her day. Vivian was a big girl now and did not need a baby car seat anymore, which made her very happy. Vivian could see her mother's eyes in the rearview mirror. They were big and blue and twinkled like they always did when her mother was happy. Oh, Vivian, Mama had such a wonderful day today. First I went to... Vivian listened for a while, but her mind wandered off when she saw a red, shiny car. She started to count red cars as they passed by. Vivian's best friend, Hamlet, was sitting on her lap. Hamlet was a perfectly pink pig with a pin curl tail stuffed to huggable perfection. Vivian and Hamlet were looking out the window, watching the cars zoom by, when Vivian heard her mother say they were going on a trip. So she started to listen again. Vivian's mother explained she had to go to New York City for business, and this time she was taking Vivian with her. Then she said the magic words. Vivian Scarlett had to pack. She loved to pack. Vivian Scarlett was thrilled. She pulled Hamlet close to her and giggled into his ear. Hamlet loved it when she did that. It made him giggle as well. When they arrived home, Vivian skipped through the front door, down the hall, and into her room. She and Hamlet had a task to accomplish, a wonderful task. She plopped Hamlet on her bed and began to ponder. What to bring, what to bring, what to bring, Vivian muttered. Hamlet sat on the bed watching her ponder and pace. Vivian shot Hamlet a mean look because she knew he was giggling at her. You don't understand, Hamlet. Mama said I have to fit everything in one suitcase. I have to choose carefully. She put on her best pouty look. Hamlet pouted too. Oh my, thought Vivian. Hamlet needs to pack too. What does a pig need when he goes on a trip? Hamlet squealed with excitement. He loved to travel. Vivian spied her new sunglasses on her dresser. They were a must-pack item. She thought she looked so cute in them. Hamlet wanted his new sunglasses too. He thought he looked adorable in his new glasses. The saleslady at the shop had told him so. Excuse my dogs. Hamlet smiled at Vivian, which made her remember her toothbrush. She had never seen Hamlet's teeth, but she knew he brushed them. She heard him every night in the bathroom humming as he washed his face, brushed his teeth, and cleaned his ears. As her mother had warned her, there weren't enough breath mints in the world to cover up a pig's bad breath. Hamlet wanted to bring a hat. He was thinking he should bring his cowboy hat, which he loved. But then maybe his baseball cap would be better. A little nod to the royals there, babe. Oh, one hat, Hamlet. You don't have a lot of space in this backpack, Vivian scolded. But it's hard to choose, said Hamlet. I look so handsome in both of them. Vivian twirled over to her art table. Vivian loved to twirl, and she moved around the room. Sitting down in her art chair, she debated which to pack, her crayons or her markers. Hamlet peeked over her shoulder and reached for the box of crayons. No, Hamlet! Ever since she had gotten into trouble for the graffiti Hamlet drew on the living room wall, Vivian did not let him use her markers or crayons. Hamlet was a bit too artistic for his own good. Vivian went back to gathering their things. Hamlet stood on the bed wearing his fanny pack. Oh my, thought Vivian, he has gained a bit of weight. She suspected he realizes too. The belt of the fanny pack was at its longest length, and it was still straining at his tummy. He stood there all smiles, then he turned around and wiggled. Does this make my tail look too big? He asked. Vivian didn't have the heart to tell him, so she fibbed. I think the pack shrunk in the dryer. We need to ask Mama to buy you a new one. Vivian studied her bookcase. Oh my, there were so many good books she wanted to bring on this trip. She thought maybe she could fit 3 in her backpack. One had to be Hamlet's favorite, or she wouldn't hear the end of it from him. The favorite? Charlotte's Web. Next, Vivian pulled out her favorite rubber ducky floaty. She put it in the backpack pile. She hoped there was a pool at the hotel because she loved to swim. The sound of snort giggles made Vivian turn around. Hamlet was modeling her rubber duck floaty. He stood in a lifeguard stance and barked orders at imaginary swimmers in an imaginary pool. Sometimes Hamlet is so bossy, she thought. Vivian didn't even think he could swim. Now to find my favorite dress, thought Vivian. She realized her mother probably wouldn't pack it, not because her mother was mean, but because this week Vivian had decided her favorite dress was the one with all the bright polka dots and not the silly old pink dress she had worn as her favorite last week. As she fetched her new favorite dress from the closet, she noticed Hamlet was sitting in a pile of clothes in the corner of her room. "What are you doing?" she asked. Sorry, I missed the picture. "Naughty spot," was Hamlet's calm reply. Vivian's smile dropped. She hated being sent to the naughty spot for timeout. She was very lazy about hanging her clothes up. Hanging up her clothes she tried on when she was getting ready in the morning. The dresses she decided weren't pretty for that day got tossed in a pile in the corner. Hamlet had a way of reminding her when she was about to get into trouble for letting her room become, as her mother said, a pig pen. Vivian did not like to clean her room, but sitting in the naughty spot was worse. She started to hang her clothes back up. By the time she reached the last dress in the pile, she found Hamlet's favorite shirt. His smile lit up as bright as the color. "Well, we can't leave that behind," Vivian said. A nod to Magnum PI. In the pile of things to pack was growing big, and Vivian Scarlett still had more to gather. There was her lipstick, well, really a chapstick, but lipstick sounded so much more grown up. Then there was her purse, her keys, her computer, and her camera. Vivian looked around her bedroom again. She grabbed her memory game, her favorite necklace, her pink teapot, 3 cans of Play-Doh, and her favorite purple feather boa. Hamlet wrapped the feather boa around his shoulders. "Now you're just copying me, Hamlet," Vivian said in a very frustrated tone. Vivian and Hamlet sat on the bed and stared at all the things they wanted to pack. The pile was huge. "How did it get so big?" asked Vivian. Hamlet had no idea. Why not pack all their stuff in his suitcase, she thought. It was big enough. It worked. Well, Hamlet had to sit on the suitcase to get it closed, but it finally closed. Vivian and Hamlet were hugging each other all over their success when Vivian's mother peeked into her room. "How's the packing going?" her mother inquired. Vivian and Hamlet proudly pointed to their stuffed suitcase. "Oh no, Vivian Scarlett, you cannot take that much stuff. I said your backpack, young lady, not a suitcase." Vivian started to cry. Hamlet held her tight. "We can leave all my stuff, Vivian. All I need is you," whispered Hamlet. Vivian squeezed her best friend tight. "You're right, Hamlet. All I need is you." The end. That was
Very good.
one of the first ones I did, and I had a lot of fun with it. It's after a girlfriend's daughter. I mean, just the naughty spot. I mean, all the little activities that you see in life just were right there, ripe for the picking.
So Hamlet wears a shirt but no pants?
No pants. Has a tail.
Well, yeah, I could see that.
You know, and
Well,
shirts are easier.
Kudos to Hamlet.
For his Hawaiian print.
Yes, people are very strict about me wearing pants. So.
And then when you pop over to a pig packed to Piccadilly, Hamlet gets mad at Vivian and jumps in a box destined for London and hijacks his little way off to London and meets a doll and figures out he has no idea what what friendship is. And so this little doll, little porcelain doll in London, helps him realize he has a little bit of growing up when it comes to being a best friend.
Yes. That made me smile more than I've smiled in several days.
Thank you. It's told, the pictures throughout this book are told like they're an Instagram story. So it's Hamlet's little Instagram where the artist just stuck him in, my little graphic guy stuck him in to all these wonderful pictures of him on a double-decker bus and him making fun of a beef eater and just wonderful little vintage pictures of are classic pictures of England.
Right. Very
And
nice.
the little porcelain doll.
Very nice. Did you say you had more to read, or?
If you guys are behind, I'm good. But
We're a
if
little
you
bit
want
behind.
more.
I'm sorry.
Sorry?
We're a little bit behind.
Then, hey, you got a book from me.
Well, you said you weren't a good reader, and you were so good. You were very good. Don't know what you were talking about. All right. Thank you so much, Rachel. I posted your links in the chat. And,
Perfect. I hope everybody enjoys it.
I'm sure. Absolutely. I know they will. I think our next person is JR. Hi, JR. JR Frontera has been telling stories in some form or another since she could hold a crayon and draw. When she's not writing or momming and podcasting or working at her full-time job, she is horseback riding, playing video games, or cosplaying, sorry. Never say that right. You can see she has the first book of her Lucky Logan series. Her second book, which is on the right, will be coming out soon, I believe. She also has the other series, Starship Ass, that she wrote in corroboration with Ethan Prickle. Very good. Sorry about that. I know Red Dead Redemption 2 is your favorite game right now.
Yeah.
I watched your Instagram, and it is wall to wall.
Yes, the readership for that game and my Lucky Logan series, there's a lot of crossover there. So.
Sure, absolutely. So what are you going to read for us today?
Today I will be reading some of book 1 of the Legacy of Lucky Logan series. So yes, this one came out this past March, and book 2 is coming out soon. It'll probably release in October, I would say. It was supposed to be September. I'm running a little behind because of the fun pandemic stuff, but
Sure.
it'd still be not too late. Maybe a month.
Very good. Well, go ahead.
All right, awesome. And yeah, speaking of the Red Dead, so this series is an audiobook, and I actually got the voice and performance capture actor who plays Arthur Morgan in Red Dead Redemption 2 to narrate this series. So that was super fun, and that's another reason why my Instagram is all Red Dead now. So like I said, lots of crossover there, but he does a fantastic job. He does way better than me. So if you feel like you'd rather listen to these books, they will be out pretty much wherever audiobooks are sold. So yeah, so today I'm going to be reading a scene. The main character is a young man. He is an outlaw, not necessarily entirely by choice, but he has been looking for his missing sister for some time now, and he believes he found finally where she is, and she is in the clutches of basically the worst, most feared outlaw in the Western Territories. So he is currently trying to find a way to buy her back from the scary outlaw, who is a woman, by the way, in case it's not clear in here. But in this little excerpt, I'm going to actually read a scene that I realized is the meet cute scene. I don't know if you read any romance, you might have heard that before. I had actually not heard it for a while. But technically, I realized as I was about to read this scene that this is their meet cute. So Van is going to meet the lady that he eventually grows very fond of, although that takes time as well. So it's been a lot of fun to write. But anyway, all right, I will just commence with the reading. Okay. I was feeling pretty confident now that by the time Holt came back this evening, he would have some kind of a plan in place. We'd have the money by this time tomorrow and be out of here, well on our way back to Bravebank to arrange the meeting with Nan and get Ellyn back. I was about to turn away from the window and get back to the comfort of the bed when a commotion broke out on the street below. I stepped over again to see what was going on. A group of lawmen on horseback were clearing the streets, trotting up fast and nearly running over a few folk. Shouts of offense and indignation welled in their wake, but they drew up short in front of the 7 Knives, right below my window. They milled about restlessly, scanning the crowds nearby, who were quickly dispersing. My right hand drifted down to my gun, rested and easy. The group below looked almost like a posse, and I didn't much like posses, especially when they were coming after me. I wasn't sure who this group was after exactly, but they were surely after someone. I didn't think they could be after me or Holt, but it was always better to be safe than dead. I eased my pistol a little out of the holster, quietly and carefully pulling the hammer back. "Where is she?" one of the men in the posse bellowed, his voice echoing out across the street. "I know one of you saw where she went. Failure to aid us is a crime, you remember that. Speak up now or face the justice of the law." Oh, she. I eased the hammer down again and settled my gun back into leather. Wait, she? "Where is she?" the lawman demanded again. But now there was hardly anyone left in the street to hear him. They'd all scattered at the sign of trouble. The doors to the 7 Knives opened, and I saw Sally herself exit the saloon and calmly walk down the front steps to face the group of lawmen. They all turned their horses to face her. In turn, she put her hands on her hips and shook her head. Now, gentlemen," she scolded. "Pray tell, why must you make such a ruckus in front of my saloon?" "We're looking for a slave that ran off," the lawman snapped. "One of Baron Whitaker's. Young woman, red hair, about your height. You've seen her?" Sally crossed her arms. "I have not, but I will certainly alert the sheriff's office if I do." My hand tightened again around the grip of my pistol, and a sour taste rose in the back of my mouth. Slavers, like the ones who'd caught up to Ellyn. I'd kill 'em all myself if I could. But killing all those lawmen down below wouldn't be smart. Not now. Not yet. There was a heartbeat of silence, and I could tell the lawman didn't believe Sally hadn't seen the woman they were after. "We tracked her here," he said finally. "She's around here somewhere. Probably trying to hide in one of these buildings, I imagine. Maybe trying to hide in your saloon." Sally shrugged. "Maybe. Why don't you put up a poster of her with a nice reward?" "We already did," the man snarled. "Well, then I imagine the best thing to do would be to wait. Give it some time. There's a lot of people in this town, mister. Someone's bound to find her." "We ain't got time," the lawman said. "Baron Whitaker wants her back. Now." The door to my room flung open behind me and I spun, gun drawn. But it weren't no thief or bounty hunter coming after me. It was a woman. She slammed the door shut again behind her, latched it, and turned, then froze at the sight of me and my revolver, eyes going wide. I blinked, taken in the sight of her dirt-streaked trousers and blouse, her skinny frame, the red hair a mess and fallen down over her shoulders and face. It was her, the escaped slave. Through the open window, I heard Sally say, "Seems to me Baron Whitaker could stand to learn some patience." "I have money," the woman in front of me blurted. Then she squeezed her eyes shut and shook her head, snapped them open again. "I mean, my family has money. Help me escape. They'll pay you twice as much as Whitaker would." I lifted my eyebrows. I didn't even know how much this Baron Whitaker was offering for her return. It didn't much matter. I wouldn't have taken her back to him anyway. But the offer of money didn't sound too bad neither. "Search these buildings," the lawman roared to his men below. "Every single one of them. Every single room. Find that girl." Shit. I crossed the room. Her dark blue eyes grew impossibly wider. And that's when I realized there was only one way out of this. And then it goes to a different chapter. Chapter 9, Proper Manners. "Take off your clothes," I ordered. "I beg your pardon? What did you just say to me?" I'd never heard a woman sound so offended. I limped to the wardrobe, throwing it open. Of course there weren't nothing suitable for a woman in there, but I weren't looking for clothes. I was looking for something else, and Prey and Sally kept some of it stocked in her rooms as a service. Usually the nicer places did, and Sally had a nicer place. "Take off your clothes," I repeated. "You want those law dogs to find you or not? We ain't got much time. Wash your face in the basin, strip, and get in the bed." She let out a little laugh, high and airy. I heard some of the posse stomping around downstairs, and my heartbeat quickened. I pulled open the wardrobe drawer, rummaging through shaving supplies, and finally, boot polish. I pulled it out. "You think I'm going to bestow my charms upon you just because I asked you to help me escape? No way, mister, no way." She backed up against the door, hands clutched to her breast, shaking her head. I stared at her for a minute, then grasped her meaning and realized my instructions had sounded all wrong. "No," I said. "No, lady, I ain't trying to take advantage of you. I'm trying to help you escape, but they're going to recognize you unless we change up your appearance, you follow? You can make it look like you're one of Sally's girls, but we got to act fast." Comprehension dawned on her face. I heard some of the posse stomping up the stairs now. We were really running out of time. Quick, I snapped. I'm gonna smear some of this in your hair to cover up the red, yeah? I held up the boot polish. She grimaced in disgust, but nodded. I got to work on her hair best I could as she splashed water on her face, scrubbing off the dirt. Then I scrubbed the polish off my hands best I could and threw the dirty basin water out the room's side window. By the time I'd done that and replaced the basin, she'd taken off her dusty clothes and shoved them beneath the sheets at the end of the bed and crawled under the covers herself. I heard heavy boot steps coming down the hall. I tossed my hat to one of the bedposts and pulled my shirt up over my head, having no time to mess with the buttons, throwing it to the floor. She watched me with terrified eyes as I unbuckled my gun belts and let them thump to the floor, but within easy arm's reach of the bed. Better to be safe than dead. She didn't fully trust that I wouldn't take advantage of her. That much was plain on her face. I stepped out of my boots, hearing the doors being busted in now and the loud protest of the other room's occupants. You try anything, mister, and I'll yell, she whispered as I moved toward her. I'll tell the lawman who I am and tell Whitaker what you did, and he'll... I ain't gonna try anything, I hissed back. I ain't even taken off my pants. And I wasn't. For more reason than to prove to her my honest intentions. I also didn't want her to see my metal leg. I slipped under the sheets, averting my gaze from her nakedness, and rolled over on top of her just as our door got kicked in. I scowled and swore, feigning anger at the interruption, and twisted half around to glare at the two men who'd barged in. Hey, you mind? Can't you see I'm a little busy? Shut it, you, one of them growled. We're looking for an escaped slave. He stepped into the room and opened the wardrobe, then looked behind it. Well, they ain't in here, I said, lowering down over the girl as the second of them came closer to the bed, then bent down to look under it. Pretty sure we would have noticed. I hoped they wouldn't look at her too close. The polish in her hair was rubbing off on the pillow. Her naked breast pressed into my chest, and I felt her rapid breathing, the pounding of her heart. I swallowed. Maybe this hadn't been the best idea. It'd been a long time since I'd been in bed with a woman. I cleared my throat and refocused my attention on the two lawmen. You boys about done? I'd like to get on with it. They were making a show of checking the room, looking behind the single chair and wash basin stand, even though it were obvious there was no one hiding in there. Oh, no, take your time, the girl drawled, surprising me. She'd made her voice higher and inflected a southern accent. She lifted one hand to stroke my cheek and smiled up at me, putting on a show. I charged by the hour, after all. Despite the fact she weren't no real whore and I'd never really hired her, my frown was a real one. It made one of the lawmen chuckle and one of them scoff. To my relief, they both headed toward the door. One turned back just before leaving. You see a skinny redhead girl with the Whitaker brand, you tell the sheriff. $1,000 to you if you bring her in yourself. Got it? I nodded. Sure thing, officer. He touched the brim of his hat, eyes sliding toward the lady. I held my breath. Enjoy, he said, and then he stepped out and pulled the door shut behind him. Of course, it didn't latch no more, seeing as they'd busted it, but it stayed mostly closed, only a thin crack looking out into the hallway. Then I heard him thump back downstairs. My room was the last room in the hall. I breathed out a long, slow breath. The woman planted her hands against my chest and gave me a shove that knocked me clean out of the bed. I went sprawling to the floor, taking most of the sheets with me, and hit with a grunt on my left hip and elbow, wincing as pain shot through my leg. She yanked the sheets back toward her to cover up her nakedness, scooting me a foot or so along the floor. She was damn strong for being so skinny. Ow, I complained, rolling free of the twisted sheets and crawling toward my discarded shirt. No need for that. I was getting up. So I have that marked as being about 10 minutes. So I'll stop there. But anyway, that's about it. And I did forget to mention this is a steampunk or sci-fi Western. So in case you could not tell, clearly the Western aspects were pretty clear, but also, yes, Van, the main character, does have a metal leg now. That is one of the things that he gets in book one. And it makes his life very interesting for the rest of the series, pretty much.
That was awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I like steampunk and I like Westerns, but I don't really read that much of those genres. So it was nice to hear you actually read some of that. If for the rest of you, if you're interested in buying her books, her website I posted into the chat, jrfrontera.com. So I definitely invite you to check her site out. And
I do have some other genres, like most of the authors here, I think. I have a funny space opera series. That's the Starship Ass.
Right.
I think you mentioned. And then I have one children's book out with another one, a Minecraft chapter book coming eventually.
Do they wear pants?
You know, the kid in this book does wear pants.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you.
He does have a panda bear who accompanies him on this little trip, and the panda has to close it all. So.
Okay. Well, yes. All right. Very good. Well, thank you again. I appreciate you reading for us. Our next, I am getting good at this, seriously. Greg Gildersleeve is one of our local authors. He's also involved in the Writer's Place here in town. He has published a comic book called The Gold Dust and a novella, False Alarm. He's also written a series of books, The Power Club and the sequel, The Secret Club, as well as, I guess I said False Alarm. You can see those on the right there. He is also an assistant professor of English at Grantham University. I hope I said that right, Ellyn. And you can visit him at greggildersleeve.com. Greg, do I have you there?
You have me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
All right.
Let me stop that share. There. And what are you going to be reading for us today, Greg?
Okay, I'm going to be reading some part from the new book, The Secret Club, which came out in February, and it's part 2 of the Power Club series. And the premise of this is kind of simple. I mean, superheroes are so popular these days. Why not write about superheroes? Except I've been writing about superheroes my whole life. I grew up reading superheroes and a bunch of other stuff too, but this was always the stuff that was closest to me. And so I started working on this, a long time ago. The premise of it is, and also I have to tell you that this is partly based on growing up in St. Joseph, Missouri, which if you're familiar with that, is a really nice place about 60 miles north of here, from where I am. And St. Joe was a nice place to grow up, but there wasn't much to do there except sit around, read comic books, and play superheroes. So that kind of idea has always stuck with me. What if you know, you were a kid growing up in a place like that, and you had superpowers, and you couldn't go anywhere because the government wouldn't let you? So that was the whole premise, the whole start of this whole thing. And in the first book, my main character, Damon, who was 13 in the main book, in the first book, has the ability to create darkness. Okay, it's not the most exciting power, but it gets him into this club called the Power Club, where he eventually, you know, it's just a club where people are supposed to hang out and have fun and test their powers. Eventually, they learn they can be heroes. They can, you know, do some good with it. But things don't always turn out quite the way Damon hoped it would. And in the second book, well, he's basically starting over. I'm going to start off by reading the back cover because I think that this really summarizes what this book is about. 8th grade isn't what Damon thought it would be. He starts over in the lowest grade at the new school. He doesn't get to be a crossing guard, which is, you know, if you're a kid growing up in St. Joe, that's what you want. You want to be a crossing guard. And his power to create darkness turns itself on and off. Worse, 2 former members of the Power Club have started a new team without him. But things aren't what they seem. The new school provides a setting for more powered kids, new friends, and an old enemy who nurses a grudge. Only Damon can stop him if he can get a new club together in time. Okay? So right before this, Damon has had an encounter with Danner, an older boy who has the ability to grow to giant sizes. Damon and Danner have not gotten along much, but they both discovered that Calvin, the bad guy, is back, and he is causing other kids to disappear, and there's no one who can help them. Okay, so Damon ran up the block as fast as he could. It was urgent that he get home and make a few calls. Damn it, Mom, I wouldn't have to do this if I had my own phone. Not only would having his own phone mean he could have already made those calls, but he wouldn't have to go home and face his mother and explain everything. He'd be grounded for sure. Danner went home too. When you're a 20-foot giant, you can get home quicker. They should have stayed together, Damon argued, but Danner wanted to go home and check something with his father. It wasn't safe, he said, to call him on the phone. It was dark by the time Damon reached the front porch. He wanted to barge inside and head for the landline, but his mother would ask questions if he came home all out of breath. Finally, he was able to breathe normally. He would just pretend everything was normal as he made his way into the kitchen where the landline awaited. I was about to call the police, Damon's mother said as he entered the living room. The yellow light from the table lamp illuminated the room with a sickly, dull hue as Leah Newmeyer reclined on her couch, her attention focused on a nighttime soap opera. What? Damon said, wondering how she could have known. You said you'd come home an hour ago. Oh, Damon felt the weight of doom lift from him. Meeting ran long, sorry. How did your meeting with your new friends go? Fine. Damon started for the kitchen. Your old friend Danner stopped by and asked for you. I hope it's okay, but I told you where you'd gone. I told him where you'd gone. He's not my... The word caught in Danner's throat. Maybe it wasn't true anymore. Maybe he and Danner were friends now, or allies at least. I need to make a call. Leah Newmeyer took a sip from the beer can, which had been resting on the table, and turned her attention back to the soap opera. Damon thought he saw her nod, but whether it was to acknowledge his statement or because of something on TV, he couldn't tell. Although Damon wasn't allowed to have his own phone, his mother kept a landline affixed to the wall in the kitchen. It was an antique, a rotary phone with numbers you actually dialed. Who had those anymore? Leah said it belonged to her parents, and it was one of the few things she kept when she moved her family to the district, a requirement once Damon developed a power. Every time Damon saw a phone, he thought it was just there to remind him it was his fault for uprooting their lives. He avoided the phone. There was no one he wanted to call anyway. But tonight, the phone might save a few lives. He lifted the headset off its cradle and pulled from his jeans pocket a scrap of paper on which he had scrawled 4 phone numbers. He thought he should call Eddie first, but something tugged at the back of his mind. Denise's vision. Was Eddie secretly working with Calvin? No, Damon wouldn't believe it. But just in case, he dialed Gareth's number first, but there was no answer. The phone didn't even go to voicemail. He dialed Sammy's number. You know who you are, the voicemail began. You know who I am. Leave a message. Typical. Hey, Sammy, this is Damon. If you get this message soon, call me back. It's urgent. Sammy's voice, her real voice, interrupted. Hey, Damon, what's up? She sounded drowsy. Damon explained the situation as best he could, and that it was time for the secret club to go after Calvin. There was a pause. Damon, it's the middle of the night. Damon glanced at the digital clock on the wall. And it's only 9. Look. She dragged out the word as if she were thinking of an excuse. This secret club has been fun, but you're seriously saying we should go after a kid who could make people disappear? Damon wasn't sure what to say. But I thought you wanted to get back at Calvin for what he did to Susie Steele. I do, she asserted. But when we were working out today, it made me realize just how little I have to contribute. I mean, super hearing? What's that? That's nothing compared to super strength or turning into a werewolf. Call Gareth. Call Eddie. I'm going to call everyone. He didn't think it wise to tell her he couldn't get a hold of Gareth. Maybe he could try again. I'm going to call Kiera, too. Don't bother, she's right here. We're having a sleepover. Damon perked up, thinking that even if Sammy didn't want to come, maybe Kiera might. But before he could ask Sammy to pass the phone, he heard the 2 girls arguing. Kiera says you should call the police, Sammy said. The district police won't do anything. We've been over this. Besides, Sammy said, we don't even know where to find Calvin. Danner said he thinks his dad might be able to help. He's supposed to call me. Then an idea hit Damon. Look, with your hearing, you could probably find Calvin before anyone else can. Then all you have to do is tell us where he is. Then you can leave, okay? Okay, came a terse reply, but that's it. Call us back when you know where we're going. The phone disconnected. Only Eddie's number remained. Damon stared at it like it was a secret code to a game. Either the number would lead to salvation or doom. He wished he could be sure which, but maybe Denise was wrong. She did say she only saw a monster of some kind. It could be anything. Damon dialed the number. When Eddie answered, Damon explained the situation. So it's really happening. Eddie sounded calm. Damn, I wish we had more time to practice. Me too. But if Calvin's made the others disappear, Danner and I are next. It's better to strike first. Yeah, I guess. So what's the plan? How do we get Calvin to bring the other kids back? Damon hadn't thought that far ahead. He knew Calvin wouldn't bring them back unless he wanted to. They would have to give him a reason. He doesn't want to get arrested again and sent to Alaska. Maybe the district police have found a way to keep him from escaping this time. That's a big maybe. Eddie sounded perturbed. Look, Gareth and I can lean on him, if you know what I mean. I couldn't get a hold of Gareth. Damon bit his tongue as soon as he said it, damn honesty. But Eddie didn't sound upset. I know where he lives. I'll find him. Just call me back as soon as Danner calls you. Damon agreed and hung up. As soon as he did, the phone rang. He snatched the receiver off its cradle, hoping his mother hadn't heard it ring. Hello? Who's been tying up your phone? Danner screamed. I've been trying to reach you for 10 minutes. Damon was relieved that it was Danner, not someone else. A friend of Eldon's, maybe, or Grandma Ellyn, who still dialed the landline on occasion. What'd you find out, Danner? My dad said the district police know Calvin's back, but they can't keep track of him. Small wonder, Damon thought, for the kid who can open a rift to other dimensions and jump inside. Dad said Calvin's displacement signature lingers around his old neighborhood. They've been keeping his old house under surveillance, but so far they haven't spotted him. Wait a minute, what's a displacement signature? Every time Calvin opens a rift, it displaces atoms and molecules, weakening the barrier between our world and the other dimension. There's a special device that can detect it, but the signature doesn't last long. That's why the police can't track him. They have to be nearby when he opens the rift and returns to our world. Damon thought about that. We have to go to Calvin's house. Maybe we can find him when the police can't. And just how do we do that? Damon smiled with pride as he told Danner about the secret club, which included a girl with super hearing. Are you crazy? We can't bring more kids into this. This isn't some comic book, Damon. Calvin's dangerous in case you hadn't figured that out. Hey, I'm the guy who got sent into the orange dimension, remember? Damon struggled not to lose his cool or raise his voice. We need help, Danner. We can't rely on your safety patrol, since Doc Stone may be involved. The secret club is all we've got. There was a pause on the other end. Damon pressed his advantage. Look, I've worked out with these guys, and they're really good. Eddie said he and Gareth could lean on Calvin, make him bring Denise and the others back. Oh, great. You've gone from a comic book nerd to watching gangster movies. No, Damon, just no. I don't even know these kids. You know Eddie, Damon encountered. He tried out for the safety patrol. He's the guy who can turn to a werewolf, remember? There was a laugh on the other end, or a cry, maybe both. Listen, stupid. I don't know what this Eddie guy told you, but nobody who can turn to a werewolf has ever tried out for the safety patrol. And that's where I will stop.
Thank you very much, Rick. Love that. I love the how you're talking about it's not a comic book villain. I like that. That was funny.
You love that it's not a comic book villain?
Well, you see, I mean, you're influenced by comic books.
Uh-huh.
He's more of a literary comic book villain, I guess, in a way. In a way.
Well, thank you.
for those, again, Greg is involved in the Writers' Place here in Kansas City. What's the website for the Writers' Place?
Oh, you would ask me that. I think it's thewritersplace.org.
Right.
All one word, all written together.
Of course, they can just Google.
Yeah.
Anymore.
Well, there are several Writers' Places. Make sure that you pick the one in Kansas City. Now, the Writers' Place is an organization. Thank you for giving me a chance to plug. It's an organization. It's been around since the early '90s, and we promote writing throughout Kansas City. Unfortunately, it gets a reputation as being the poets' place because most of the people who are involved are poets, and most of the readings we've done over the years have been for poets. But we're trying to expand and do other things. And as Bill knows, William knows, we did a live reading back in March, 1 week before this whole coronavirus thing hit. So our timing was impeccable.
Yes,
but
it was.
It ran over well, and now we're trying to do the same thing in an online environment. And I set up a date for September 4th, which is right before Labor Day. So if any of you are interested in doing this reading, and I know JR Frontera is already committed to doing it. If any of you, the rest of you are, please email me, contact me as soon as possible so we can get you in. And we will pick the featured readers. If you're interested in being a featured reader, let me know that. But we're also going to have an open mic afterwards so that anybody can get on and read their stuff.
But other people, I mean, even if you're not reading, you can still tune in, so to speak.
Absolutely. Please, if you just want to tune in and listen and buy books, we're not going to stop you.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. We have two more readers, Jennifer and Les. Let me get Jennifer's thing up here. Jennifer Haskin. Jennifer is the author of the Freedom Fight trilogy, coming of age journey for young adults who love fantasy and sci-fi and romance. It's a trifecta, I would say. True to her genre, she is a total young adult book nerd. You can see the 3 books of her trilogy right there, starting with The Key of F. Jennifer, what are you going to be reading for us today?
Well, and the books actually have new covers. They're behind me. They're now branded, so they look like they actually go together.
Sure.
Yeah.
Very good.
I'm going to read from The Key of F, but I have a question. I want to hear from people. Do you want to hear Kiss and a Fight, Sellout Teenager, Two-Man Fight, or a Magic Tussle?
Ooh, Magic Tussle.
Magic Tussle, is that what everybody thinks? Okay, cool.
I am the host. I should get the only vote.
Okay. Okay.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
All right, Magic Tussle. Fed, packed, and mounted, Fail sat atop a snowy white mare. Kieran's chestnut stallion glistened in the rising sun, and the 2 beautiful painted horses given to Izzy and Lyle whinnied and pranced about. Fail said one last farewell to the mages and gave thanks for all their help. The 4 of them looked at each other. Follow me, Kieran said, and their journey only beginning. In an instant, however, shouts sounded from across the square. Protect the queen! Heat seared Fail's face as she heard the crackle of burning hair around her ear. She threw her hands up to protect her cheeks. Duck! Kieran yelled. Fail dodged the next fireball, but her horse was spooked and reared up on its hind legs. Fail screamed as she gripped the reins and leaned forward in the saddle out of instinct. She looked around to see the other horses panicking. Then chaos in the square stole her attention. An alarm siren sounded. Men and women poured into the open space. With hurricane force, one man blew down the henchman running at her. One woman with orange hair stood in front of Fail and cast a light blue shield around her, then ran off. 2 wizards appeared in the center of the square, and black smoke emitted from the charms they had around their necks. Fail shook as she watched the smoke permeate the shields of the mages in front of them and choke them. Their skin darkened as well as their eyes, and they each turned toward Fail with a malicious gleam in their smiles. She didn't know what to do. She wasn't prepared for this kind of magic yet. Hide her, someone shouted. All around her were screams and bursts of light. Secure the queen was echoed from every direction. Someone grabbed her horse by the reins. What are you doing? She yelled. We have to hide you, the man called back. No! Vale dug her heels in and pulled the leather strip so hard she pulled a stitch in her bicep. I have to fight. This is my fight. A blast of light exploded off the shield around her. Vale flinched before she realized the barrier held. Then she looked to the twin hooded figures and saw them floating several inches above the ground. This can't be good. The hood on the left pointed at her, and a plasma bolt shot from the circlet around his finger, piercing Vale's shield and scorching her side and shoulder. Before she could react, the momentum knocked her off her horse. The world spun around her as she fought to catch her breath. Pain seared through her body, crumpling her like a wadded tissue. No, Lyle yelled and sprang from his mount in the direction of the hoods. Vale could see the covered wizard pull a flaming whip from his cape and lash the air around him in figure eights. The other hood, seeing Lyle's attack, raised one hand in Lyle's direction and one towards Vale. Kieran shouted a long, loud, guttural howl, dropping from his horse and pulling his sword from his scabbard as he stomped across the yard, putting himself directly between Vale and the depraved wizard. She heard the first clang of metal as the mountain mage descended next to her head. Oh, good, you're conscious. She lightly touched Vale's shoulder. Ah! Vale yelled out in pain. What are you doing? I'm healing you, Your Highness. I'm sorry if it's uncomfortable. You have extensive injuries and the tissues must tear apart and multiply to cover the wound. Should I stop? No, keep going. The sooner you fix me, the sooner I can join the fight. She eked out her words. But I don't think, just do it, Vale ordered with her remaining strength. She gritted her teeth against the agony of ripping flesh. Sorry, Master. Vale stretched her neck to see the battle around the woman. Lyle had been easily jumping up to dodge the whip, but the sweat on his brow showed his exertion was beginning to take a toll on his strength. Kieran's metal arm was encased in ice from the other wizard, and he used the frosty weapon to punch the hood in the face. The man did a back somersault in the air and landed several feet away from Kieran, out of his reach. The two fighters stepped in her line of sight, and Vale cursed. Get out of the way, she muttered, straining to see her friends. The mountain mage in front of her was dueling against twin swords as a small wizard pushed him back. She swung her deadly sharp blades in the shape of a butterfly, advancing as she went, like a grinder chasing its meat. The man backed up, but didn't appear to have a weapon. He stared at her with a look of pure concentration. All at once she stopped, her hands close together, sabers still arcing, her face blank. The mountain mage smiled imperceptibly and pointed back toward the fray. Vale was shocked to see the woman pivot and strike down the first fellow wizard she saw. Like blades of a fan, she plowed straight through people, with the mage following behind her, pointing the way. Mind control, whoa. A shout from Lyle showed that he had caught the tip of the wizard's weapon on his arm, where the fabric burned black and curled. He hit at the fire with his other hand. The hood with ice powers shot a barrage of pellets at Lyle, knocking him on his behind, still holding his arm. His head hit the ground with a thwack. The fire-powered hood stretched his mouth into a black-toothed smile as he raised his whip to strike. The flaming rope came down, and a sword flew through the air, severing it. Lyle covered his head as the limp length of fibers fell onto him harmlessly. Thanks, Kieran, he shouted. Vale turned her head to see her former lover pick up the sword of a fallen man and quickly deflect a bolt of plasma. The force shoved him back, his sword arm pressed to his chest. Welcome, he wheezed. I need to help. They're starting to tire. She watched Kieran rampage, swinging his broadsword in wide arcs over each shoulder. He took the feet off the wizard with his back to him and the head of another. The square was filling with blood. Wow, he's a really good fighter, Izzy said breathlessly behind Vale. She stayed astride her mount, looking ready to bolt if any action came her way. Yeah, but he's outnumbered. Vale saw a circle of wizards around Kieran, realized he was a threat, and turned to surround him. He was suddenly on the defense. Are you almost done? Vale screamed at the woman frantically. Yes, Your Highness, I just need to. Good. She jumped up and grabbed her swords from her saddle. Put the shield on Izzy. I have to go, she yelled behind her. Immediately, a wire-thin man with an amulet the size of a pear stepped in front of her. He smiled with the same gross teeth as the other wizard. Ick. More importantly, he held out a sword straight at her heart. In Fail's need to get to Kieran, she swung her blade up to knock his out of the way and stepped forward, but he was already there, his sword rising to her throat. She leapt into action and countered his swing with her own. Blades clashing together, edge to edge, she used the force of his push to her advantage. She pulled her sword back and stepped to the side as he shot forward, taking a few steps. He spun, weapon out, and again she met his thrust with a wide arcing blow. There was clanging and chinging and booming surrounding her. She could almost taste the sour tang of blood she smelled. Fail could feel the pommel of her sword, hot and slippery in her fist. Grunts and cries rang out like a death song, and she began to dance. Lightly she stepped over hands of the fallen, bringing her blades in front of her and twirling as she swung. She remembered being a child and holding sticks with long ribbons that flowed as she moved, up and down, back and forth in circles. She felt the same way. The blood rushing in her ears held a steady drumbeat for her macabre performance. When opponents struck high, she swung low. When they came at her heart, she batted them away with twin swords blurring. When she had decimated a halo of dead wizards around herself, she took a deep breath and remembered her friends. Scanning the square, Fail desperately searched for Kieran. He wasn't in sight, and panic rose in her chest. Where is he? She saw Lyle back at the horse, holding Izzy's reins, trying to calm both animals and pulling an amulet from his bag. With one hand, he slipped the necklace over his head. It lit up with a bright red light as he spoke words she could not hear. Cries of pain and triumph arose from the square. She turned to see Kieran swing his Valesian arm, he has a metal arm, in a great arc and plant his fist in the chest of a man who flew backward, his arms and legs thrown out in front of him. She ran to help him, a new light blue shield encapsulating her. Power. She felt a surge of strength run through her veins, a jolt of electricity. Her head felt like she had a caffeine rush. She was invincible. Fire shot from her outstretched palms, and the men in front of her screamed as they fell, burning from their clothes, their skin crackling. "Kieran, look out!" she called. He ducked under a wooden pole with an iron axe at the end. Fail was furious. She pushed the man back with her fire and slid into his chest with her shoulder. He fell backward, dropping the axe. She reached down and picked it up, throwing it to Kieran. "Thanks," he said, his face a mask of concentration. He put his back to Fail's, and they punched and kicked the men surrounding them. One fell away and another would arrive. The square was shrouded in smoke, streaks of fire and colored balls of light flying overhead like lit arrows. The wizards were ringed by the mages. The fight was evenly matched, and their power was failing. Lucian ran up to Fail and Kieran, along with several other men and women who began to take down the henchmen. "You need to leave, now!" He grabbed them both by the arm. Kieran nodded, but Fail took in the fight, just beginning to slow. "We can't leave you," she yelled, reaching up to disintegrate a wooden object flying at her. "You have to," Lucian insisted. "I've seen them. More wizards are coming. We can hold them off, but you need to go." "No!" Fail's impassioned voice wasn't her own. Kieran turned to her. "Fail, listen to him. We can't fight the wizards yet. You aren't ready." She shook her head frantically. "What if you can't hold them?" Lucian pleaded with her desperately. "We can't protect you from what is coming. We weren't prepared." He turned to Kieran. "You must take her." Kieran picked up Fail around the middle and lifted her feet off the ground. She reached out to Lucian. "No, Kieran, we have to help them." "Think, Fail," he shouted. "They're buying us time." She stilled in his arms. "Okay, put me down. Let's go. Get Lyle." Kieran set her down and they ran to the horses. She would let them fight her battle this time, but when she returned, she was going to mete out justice. Fail angrily swung her leg up into the saddle. Kieran jumped up onto his mount and spurred it toward Lyle, who was in front of Izzy, his amulet shooting bolts of red energy down his outstretched arm. Fail had never seen him so lethal before. His hand shot out red balls like a cannon. Kieran pointed him toward Fail. "Let's go!" She cupped her hand around her mouth. "Which way?" He pointed down the hill and galloped to her. "Northwest, this way." I'm stopping there.
Very nice, very dramatic.
Sorry.
Yes, action scenes can be quite difficult, but that was lovely. And
there are four friends going on a journey together.
Right.
So.
Very good, very good. Do you have any other works coming out soon or anything?
I have actually, like JR, I have a dark steampunk YA that's out with a couple of Big Five publishers right now. They're kind of looking it over. But I've kind of lost my love for that series, and it's something new that I'm starting to write. And, you know, the book is your baby, but then when you get a new one, you're like, oh, a new baby.
Yes.
So I'm kind
I
of
think there's a few
taken up with
memes
that
about
one.
that.
Yeah,
Very good.
space. So that'll be my first one in space. So
Very good. Well, be sure to keep everybody up to date on the progress of that.
well done.
We have one more reader today. That's going to be Les. So Les Lynam, he is also a host of a weekly meeting of writers that I belong to as well at the main Johnson County Library. We've had to be doing it via Zoom lately, but that's where Les and I first met. Les is the author of a time travel series called Time Will Tell, now in its 4th book called Just Before Dawn. But he is currently writing the 5th, and is it going to be the final?
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Which is going to be, is it 1,000,000 pages? How long was it going to be?
Something like that, yeah, maybe just 100,000, I don't know.
Okay, the section I'm going to read from today is actually from the 3rd book, In One Basket. And as a setup, it's the main 4 characters have just escaped a space station by the skin of their teeth. They have people pursuing them because they may or may not have done some larcenous acts on the space station. And basically they're riding in a late 22nd century 18-wheeler in space. It's a freighter, but it's not a big freighter, but the cab is separate from the cargo hold. And we have just had a perilous spacewalk along the edge of the trailer to get into the back of the cargo bay where the time machine is. Our heroes are Sean Kelly, his great grandson Lex, his on-again, off-again girlfriend Jane, and a newly sentient computer, Steffi. So I'll just jump into it.
Thank you.
Sean pulled and he felt his boots come free. The cargo bay seemed to swallow him as he floated in. Boots toward the ceiling, floor, or wall. Doesn't matter. We just need to get you anchored and get Lex inside, Steffi said. Sean tumbled. He felt the cable tug him back towards the doorway. He stretched his legs out and felt his boots snap against some surface. Looking good, Tiger, Shin said with a sultry flourish. And here comes Lex. Alex pulled toward Sean using a hand-over-hand method with the attached line. What are, Sean puffed, these numbers? Numbers? Steffi questioned, then nearly screamed in their ears. Lex, get that cord detached now! Alex reacted quickly and pulled the cable free from Sean's side. What has prompted this outburst, he asked. Toss it outside, quick! Alex did as instructed. Could you please explain the urgency? The cargo bay slammed shut. All his rapid breathing depleted Sean's oxygen, Steffi explained to only Alex and Jane. But worse than that, his CO2 levels are way too high. The tiny scrubbers in his helmet couldn't keep up. What does that mean? Jane demanded, not hiding the panic in her voice. Lex, are you in a position to see Sean's face? Steffi continued, ignoring Jane. Yes. His boots are attached to the ceiling, whereas mine are on the floor of a surprisingly vacant cargo hold. It appears that the empty LOX containers have vanished. I ditched them at the same time as blowing the hatch in the cockpit. What's Sean look like? I believe he may be unconscious, Alex said. What is going on? Jane yelped. Lex, I'm going to release his gravitons, and you need to get him over to me, ready to drag him inside the second we get the cargo hold repressurized. Will someone tell me what's going on? Jane screamed. Steffi addressed Jane in a calm and steady voice. Those space bubbles that deploy in emergency situations are only designed to keep the pilots alive long enough for them to correct whatever caused the depressurization. If they can't fix it in roughly 15 minutes, she broke off. Anyway, she continued, Sean's panicked breathing burned up his oxygen faster than he expected. The numbers he was asking about were from a heads-up display in the helmet. They're a warning. Jane wanted to grab the shoulders of the image on the screen and shake her, but couldn't. What's going to happen? We're going to get him inside me as quick as we can and get that bubble off. Open the door, Jane demanded. I'll help him get in. Can't do it, sweetie, Steffi replied. Not until we get the cargo area repressurized. How long will that take? Not certain. It's not an airlock. It wasn't designed for rapid changes in pressure. How long? Jane shouted. Probably a couple of minutes. Can he survive that long without oxygen? Yes, that's not the problem. He's breathing too much carbon dioxide. The toxic CO2 levels in his blood are rising. If we don't get him back inside in time, the computer didn't finish her sentence. Jane slammed her fist against the time machine's door. Open the damn doors. I can't, Jane. That would kill you. What are you talking about? Human bodies internally adjust their pressure to balance with their environment. Too quick of a change can kill you. So we just have to wait? I'm afraid so, Steffi said sadly. I can't change the laws of physics. Jane took a deep breath and released it with a slight whimper. She stared into the eyes on the screen, the striking green eyes that Sean thought of as Nicole Townsend's. He's got to be all right, Jane said softly. I'm doing all I can, Jane, Steffi assured her compassionately. I've got enough data from the repressurization to calculate the time. 4 minutes. Can he live that long? His breathing is slower now that he's unconscious. Can he live that long? Jane repeated. I don't know, Steffi admitted. I think so. Isn't there anything you can do to speed this up? Maybe. I've been running through all my data that I have on the effects of rapid decompression on the human body. And, Jane prompted, if I lower the pressure in here at a similar rate as the repressurization of the cargo hold, we can achieve equilibrium in about 3 minutes. Do it, Jane ordered. It will still be too fast for your body to adapt. Do it, Jane repeated, and she stared daggers into the green eyes on the screen. Fine, I've started, Steffi replied. You'll feel it in your ears first. It's kind of like what you feel on an airplane. You'll need to pop your ears back as we go. I've never been on an airplane. Yes, you have, Steffi corrected. Oh, wait, that was Kate. Anyway, try yawning or act like you're chewing gum. Who's Kate? Jane asked. Oh, for crying out loud, Steffi shouted. When it rains, it pours. Spiegel Builder is threatening to open fire on us if we don't turn around. She changed her focus to Alex. Lex, grab anything out there that can help you hang on, and I'm reactivating Sean's boots. Sean's floating form was suddenly riveted to the floor by his boots. Alex barely got a hand connected to the STE before he lurched forward toward the cargo bay doorway. Did they open fire upon us? Alex asked. Nope, that was me re-engaging the thrusters. I thought you said their ship was faster, Jane said. True, but I don't believe they're stupid enough to try to overtake us in the mesosphere, Steffi replied. Stupid? Jane questioned. Yep, hull temperature is already up to 900 degrees centigrade. Have you calculated terminal combustion? Alex demanded. Yep, in about 3 minutes, maybe 4. I believe that I can already detect a rise in the temperature internally, Alex said. Well, that'll shave a few seconds off, the computer began. Jane saw the image on the screen slap its virtual forehead. Why didn't I think of that before? What? What? Jane asked hopefully. Steam, Steffi announced. I can vaporize all the water on board and push it outside. The steam will increase the pressure outside in the cargo hold. Then do it, Jane demanded. Already done, Steffi replied. That should shave at least a minute off of our wait time. Steffi, if you, Jane began. Everyone shut up and listen, Steffi shouted. We've got to pull this off flawlessly. No margin for error. Lex, you've got to be ready to haul Sean inside the second I open up, then get yourself in so I can slam the door shut and fully repressurize my innards. I suggest you plan on getting in the back seat. We won't have time for musical chairs. Jane, you're going to have to find the release switches at the base of Sean's bubble helmet. Should be one on each side. When I get the pressure back up to Earth normal, the bubble will release when you press them simultaneously. Got it, Jane confirmed. She put a finger to her nose when she felt it drip. Jane, Steffi said, you're bleeding. I've got to slow this process. No, Jane commanded. I'm all right. What else do we need to know? The steam will be, Steffi began. Damn it, I'm not thinking straight. Jane, put your pseudo-bodysuit's headpiece back on. You'll need protection from the steam outside, and it should help maintain your body's pressure levels. Jane slipped her head into the thin, limp, silvery headpiece. Sean's helmet is flashing red, Alex reported. He stopped breathing, Steffi said, and we're still about 2 minutes from pressure equilibrium. The image of the green-eyed girl on the screen began spinning like a top. Now whoops. Sorry, my text suddenly jumped in the wrong place. The image of the green-eyed girl on the screen began spinning like a top. Now I know why you humans are so prone to cursing. Steffi's avatar stopped spinning and locked her green eyes on Jane. 3 deep breaths. The third one, bring it in as a yawn and hold your mouth open. Lex, I need you to bend yourself and Sean away from the door. As Jane drew in her third breath, Steffi slid the door open. The air that rushed from the cabin blew the steam away from the opening. Go, Steffi shouted. Get Sean in the front and Lex, you get in the back. Alex and Jane quickly pushed and pulled Sean's limp, weightless form into the front seat. Alex had barely got himself into the back as the door slid shut and sealed. I've repressurized with almost 50% oxygen, so no sparks, people. Jane found the 2 buttons on Sean's collar and pushed them. The steel on the bubble helmet released, and she pulled it off his head. Is he breathing? She cried. I don't think he's breathing. She pinched his nose shut and put her mouth over his and blew. She pushed on his diaphragm, took a deep breath and repeated. She put her ear next to Sean's mouth to listen, then put her mouth over his again. To her surprise, he started kissing her. And that's a stopping point.
Very nice, very nice. I really like robots, as you know. So Steffi, right?
Yep, she's an AI, the computer that's actually housed on the time machine.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Les. I want to thank everybody that's taken part today and all of the people that just came to listen. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I hope you were exposed, so to speak, to maybe even some genres you're not used to hearing. Again, the links for the different authors are in the chat. However, if you want to go to the Facebook page for the KC Writers Group, I will have links there as well later today for each of the people who read today. And I'm not sure I can fit them all on the Twitter, but did I just say the Twitter? On Twitter, there is also at KC Writers Fair. You can find us there as well. But again, thank you very much. I'm going to, if I can, this is all being recorded, which I will send to the government to have you all arrested. But before that, I will also post it on YouTube and link to it and so forth. So you can always return and watch it again if you'd like. So that is it for today. Thank you all very, very much. And I hope you have a good rest of your Saturday. Okay? Thank you so much. Thank you very much.